My son Colin is in the 6th grade, and he has a tendency to procrastinate on school projects. I can't figure out the best consequence for his behavior. Would it be better to allow him to stay up late to finish the project, or should I enforce his bedtime, which would guarantee that he wouldn't finish the project, and then he'd get a bad grade?
First, I really admire your willingness to approach this issue. What Colin is doing is a terrible habit to establish in life, not just in school projects. People who put off their preparation like this tend to do lousy work. So if you can help him modify his behavior, you'll be doing him a huge favor. Before we choose a consequence, it's usually quite helpful to review the nature and purpose of consequences. First, consequences are intended to teach and guide our children, not to punish them, not to make a child pay for something he's done wrong, and certainly not to balance the scales of justice in some way that suits our sense of fairness. Second, the primary way consequences teach is by making the wrong choice so inconvenient that children will want to avoid the wrong choice and instead make the right choice. When my children were young, for example, even though it was freezing cold in the winter, they could see no reason to wear a stupid coat when they went outside. As parents, we tend to nag them and bully them into wearing a coat, which is ridiculous. Why should we be the bad guys about making them do something that's actually good for them? So I gave up doing that very early in my parenting career and instead let consequences teach my children in this particular area. Now, I hasten to add that I did not teach them lessons about wearing coats until they were past a certain age. I didn't ask my 15-month-old, for example, if he or she wanted to wear a coat. That's a bit young to be teaching that particular lesson. But one day in January, when my 3-year-old refused my strong suggestion to wear a coat when we were leaving the house to drive to the store, I did choose to teach him with consequences. I smiled and let him run out to the car in the freezing weather without his coat. For a few minutes, my son thought this business of making his own decision was pretty fun. But gradually the smile disappeared from his face and he started shivering in the car. Finally he said, Dad. Now, I know it sounds a little cruel, but remember, I wanted to let consequences teach him something he'd remember. So I pretended I didn't hear him the first time. So he shivered for another few seconds before he called my name again and said, Dad, I'm cold. I replied, I'm not cold. I'm wearing a nice warm coat. Then I turned to his mother and his brother and I asked them if they were cold. And it turned out that they weren't cold either because they too were wearing nice warm coats. This child never again, not one time, had to be told to wear a coat in the winter. He learned this lesson without yelling or nagging or lecturing. Now, for those who are concerned about cruelty to children, at some point down the road that day, I did turn on the heater in the car. Consequences are quite effective teachers, and you are wise in your desire to use them with your son Colin. Now the question is, which consequences to use, and we'll deal with that in our next session.